230 lives, one vanished jet, and the science that found the truth. A perfect summer evening becomes America's darkest aviation nightmare. July 17, 1996. 8:31 p.m. A Boeing 747 climbs through twilight off Long Island, 230 people aboard, unaware they have less than a minute before everything changes. At about 13,800 feet, the unimaginable occurs. The airplane does not falter, it fractures. A bloom of orange tears open the sky, and for a few stunned heartbeats the Atlantic mirrors a second sunset. Below, fishermen freeze as burning debris stipples the water. Families on the beach point upward, then look away. On radar, one blip becomes many, then none. What could unmake a modern airliner in seconds? The Coast Guard's helicopters carve white circles into black water, searchlights raking a debris field that will stretch roughly 8 by 3 miles. This is not a rescue. There are no survivors. Only fragments of lives to recover, and a truth the sea will not surrender easily. At JFK, grief has nowhere to sit. Flight 800 took off at 8:19 p.m., bound for Paris. Now families stand under fluorescent lights at the International Arrivals building, staring at televisions that show boats in flame. Many are moved to the Ramada Plaza nearby, a hotel that will earn a terrible nickname, the Hotel of Tears. Witnesses step forward as the first body bags begin their quiet procession. Some swear they saw a streak rise from the horizon to meet the jet. A retired Air National Guard pilot says he knows the difference between a flare and a missile. A couple nearby describes a white line drawn upward like a finger toward the stars. The question gathers force: was Flight 800 murdered in the sky? The FBI arrives en masse. A command center hums around the clock. Navy teams scan the seabed for explosive residue or foreign objects. But the National Transportation Safety Board pushes back. To them, this is not a crime scene, it is a laboratory. Their currency is evidence, not assumption. The tension between urgency and method will define the search for answers. Beneath the surface, the recovery is brutal, necessary work. The main wreckage lies in about 120 feet of water, dark and cold, but reachable. Diverse and remotely operated vehicles move through twisted aluminum, cord and cable, seat frames and personal things that turn the ocean floor into a kind of archaeology. By the time the search is done, about 95% of the airplane by weight will be recovered. In a hangar in Calverton, New York, investigators become architects of the unthinkable. Piece by piece, they raise the jet back into the world, pinning skin to frame until a ghost of a 747 stands again. Every fragment is catalogued, measured, and read for scorch and scrape, each one a clause in a final sentence. Bernard Loeb, director of the NTSB's Office of Aviation Safety, and his teams follow the scars. Metallurgists read heat into aluminum. Electrical engineers trace wiring runs like veins. Again and again they return to the airplane's heart, the center wing fuel tank. On summer days, long ground times heat the air conditioning packs nestled beneath the tank. Those packs can warm the ullage, the space above a small quantity of fuel, until vapors become flammable. Computer models, flight data, and ground tests converge on a frighteningly ordinary possibility: an ignition of those vapors. Not a bomb. Not a missile. A spark. The precise ignition source will remain officially undetermined, but the most likely path is a short circuit that allowed excessive voltage to reach the fuel quantity indication system wiring inside the tank. In an instant, physics does what malice was first accused of. The center wing tank explodes. The forward fuselage separates. Major sections descend toward the Atlantic, shedding smaller lives as they fall. Back on shore, belief hardens in a different direction. Witnesses hold to the streaks they saw. Former radar operators and retired officers say they know what a missile track looks like. A famous press secretary stakes his credibility on a document later discredited. The most persistent mystery of Flight 800 is not mechanical, it is psychological. Why some truths feel too ordinary to accept. What many saw that night has explanations rooted in perception and geometry. After the breakup, a rising fireball and falling debris can look like an object streaking up from the horizon. Distance, angle, and failing light bend certainty into narrative. Explanations do not always change convictions. For years after the fireball, the verdict arrives without drama. James Hall, chairman of the NTSB, reads words that will echo for decades. The probable cause was an explosion of the center wing fuel tank, resulting from ignition of the flammable fuel air mixture in the tank. The ignition source cannot be pinned with certainty. For families, it lands like a second loss. How do you mourn negligence? How do you punish a spark? For years they had demanded justice against terrorists who murdered their loved ones. Now they confront a different betrayal. 230 people died because imagination lagged behind physics. In grief, many choose guardianship. The Montoursville High School French Club, 16 students and 5 chaperones who never saw Paris, become scholarships that send new students to the city they dreamed about. Captain Ralph Kevorkian's widow lends his name to training that makes other crews steadier in a crisis. Flight attendant families support safety research that will protect strangers they will never meet. The industry answers in regulations and redesign. In 2001, SFAR 88 forces sweeping fuel system safety assessments and wiring improvements across transport fleets. In 2008, new rules require flammability reduction, nitrogen inerting systems that keep fuel vapors from becoming explosive in the first place on many large passenger jets. Inspection regimes harden. Investigators learn to treat imagination as a tool, not a luxury. For years, the reconstructed wreckage stands at the NTSB Training Center in Ashburn, Virginia, teaching investigators from around the world how to listen to metal. In 2021, with its mission complete, the structure is retired. Its lessons remain, captured in data, photographs, and procedures that grew from them. Nearly 3 decades later, the debate continues at the Edge's online forums, late-night radio, conversations that circle back to certainty. But there is no evidence of a missile, no bomb found, no credible trail to friendly fire. The wreckage, the tests, and the physics point to a quieter villain: heat, wiring, and an empty space above fuel where danger waits unseen. The human mind rebels at the ordinary. We want villains we can name, plots we can expose. A fuel tank warmed by packs and sparked by a short feels too small for a disaster so large. Yet aviation is full of such lessons: small causes, vast consequences, and safety that advances one correction at a time. Night after night, jets climb out of New York and turn east, cabin lights like floating neighborhoods. People buckle in, order ginger ale, fall asleep. They do not know the names of the 230 who keep them safe: teenagers with disposable cameras, newlyweds with phrase books, a captain with roses in his yard, attendants who knew how to calm a cabin. They do not have to. Every safe landing carries the faint imprint of July 17, 1996. Safety is not an accident, it is a choice rebuilt after catastrophe, inspection by inspection, rule by rule, question by relentless question. The ocean off Long Island has flattened its surface, as oceans do. Flights pass overhead, and only the fishermen still look up a beat longer than they used to. The sky holds no scar, but the system beneath it is different now: wiring separated, tanks inert, procedures attentive to the failure no one wanted to imagine. The night itself remains what it was: blue fading to black, the last boats heading in, a line of lights on the coast. At 8:19 p.m., TWA Flight 800 rose into that sky and turned east. At 8:31 p.m., the blip on radar became many, then none. In between is the space where safety either exists or does not, where assumptions matter, and where a single spark can right a nation's grief. From ashes we kept our promise. Inspectors opened panels others would have ignored. Engineers assume the vapor can ignite and build, so it cannot. Pilots and technicians learn the habits of wiring, the routes of heat, the ways energy looks for a path. Regulators require proof instead of hope. What this accident left behind is not certainty that disasters will not happen. It is a discipline that makes them less likely, a culture that treats imagination as part of engineering, and a memory that insists on humility. Sometimes the most important victories are the disasters that never happen. Today, when millions board airplanes, they are protected by changes born of one terrible evening. The legacy lives in fuel tanks that refuse to explode, in checklists that catch the fray before it arcs, in investigators trained to read metal-like text. The dead have become guardians of the living. And that may be the most fitting memorial of all.